Hi everybody, and welcome back to AGS Stories. Today's story comes from the subreddit Am I the Ahold Shar and is by user Throwaway621, titled, Am I the Ahole for responding to my dad's request for reconciliation with a PowerPoint on why I'll never forgive him? Buckle up, because this one dives deep into family dynamics, emotional boundaries, and the tough decisions we sometimes have to make to protect our peace. Let's get into it. What would you do if the father who abandoned you suddenly wanted to reconcile after years of silence? Would you be able to forgive him, or would the pain of the past hold you back? This is the story of Olivia, a 26-year-old woman who faced heartbreak at a young age. When Olivia was only 8, her world was turned upside down. Her mother, a vibrant and loving artist, passed away after a long battle with leukemia. In the wake of this tragedy, Olivia's father, Robert, remarried just a year later, bringing a new woman into their home. Her stepmother quickly asserted herself as mom and demanded Olivia adapt, erasing her mother's presence in the process. The situation only grew worse when Olivia's half-brother, Ethan, was born. Robert's attention, already limited, shifted entirely to Ethan. Olivia, a young girl desperate for her father's love, was pushed aside. Then tragedy struck again. Ethan was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 3. While it's understandable that Robert's focus would be on his sick son, Olivia was left to fend for herself. She was told she needed to be strong and not be selfish, but those words only deepened her wounds. By the time she was 16, Olivia had stopped trying to reach out to her father. The years of neglect and emotional abandonment had taken their toll. At 18, she moved out and cut ties entirely. For Olivia, Robert was no longer a part of her life. However, 2 years ago, Ethan tragically passed away, and now Robert is reaching out. He wants to reconnect with Olivia, to make things right. But instead of a heartwarming reunion, Olivia responded in a way that shocked her family. She created a PowerPoint presentation. In it, she laid bare the pain of her childhood, the moments she felt unwanted and forgotten, and the words that had haunted her for years. Was Olivia's response too cruel, or was it a necessary step to protect herself? What would you have done in her shoes? Let's dive deeper into her story. Losing my mom felt like losing the sun in the middle of the day. She was my anchor, my everything, and when she died, my world crumbled. I was only 8, and at that age, you don't fully understand death, but you feel its impact. One day, she was there, brushing my hair, drawing with me in her sketchbook, and the next, she was gone. I remember sitting in the corner of my room after her funeral, clutching the little collages she had made for me while in the hospital, colorful pages filled with her handwriting and small illustrations meant to remind me that I was loved. But no matter how much I stared at those pages, they couldn't fill the void. For a while, it was just Dad and me, and I clung to him because he was all I had left. But that didn't last. Within a year, he remarried. I didn't hate the idea at first. I thought maybe this new person, Lisa, could help us heal. But from the moment she moved in, it became clear she didn't want to be a stepmother. She wanted to replace my mom. She rearranged the house, put my mom's pictures away, and made it clear that talking about her wasn't healthy anymore. Lisa insisted I call her mom, and when I hesitated, she'd tell me how ungrateful I was, how I needed to respect her as the woman of the house. I tried at first to make it work. I did what she asked, followed her rules, even when it felt like I was erasing pieces of my mom. But the more I complied, the more invisible I became. Then Ethan was born, and it felt like the final nail in the coffin of my relationship with my dad. Ethan was everything to him, his miracle baby with his new wife. And don't get me wrong, I loved Ethan. He was this sweet, innocent little boy who deserved all the love in the world. But it was like my dad completely forgot I existed. He'd miss school events, birthdays, even parent-teacher meetings because he was too busy. Lisa didn't help either. If I ever expressed sadness or frustration, she'd accuse me of being jealous or selfish. When Ethan was diagnosed with cancer, I knew things were going to get worse. I overheard my dad talking to Lisa one night, saying, "Olivia's healthy. She doesn't need much. We have to focus on Ethan now." It was like my worth was tied solely to my physical health. No one cared that I was falling apart inside. For years, I lived like that, tiptoeing around their world, trying not to be a burden. I spent most of my time alone in my room or at my grandparents' house. My grandparents were the only ones who noticed I wasn't okay, but even they couldn't fix it. By the time I was 16, I stopped trying to reach out to my dad. What was the point? Every conversation ended with him brushing me off, or worse, making me feel guilty for needing him when Ethan needed him more. The worst part was that I started to believe it. I started to think maybe I really was selfish for wanting love and attention. I fell into this dark place where I felt like I didn't matter, like my existence was just an inconvenience to everyone around me. I couldn't talk to anyone about it. What was the point? I was convinced no one would care, and if they did, they'd just tell me to get over it. When I turned 18, I left without looking back. I didn't even tell my dad I was going. I just packed my things and moved into a small apartment with the money I'd saved from part-time jobs. Cutting him off felt like tearing off a bandage. It hurt, but it was also a relief. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe. Fast forward to 2 years ago, when Ethan passed away. I found out through my grandparents. They were gentle about it, knowing how complicated my feelings were, but it still broke my heart. Ethan was a good kid. None of this was his fault. I cried for him, for the years I missed out on being his sister, for the fact that he never got to grow up. But even then, I didn't reach out to my dad. Why would I? He had made his choice years ago, and I had made mine. Then, a few weeks ago, he reached out. He didn't call me directly. He went through my grandparents. He said he wanted to talk and make things right. I laughed when they told me. Make things right? After all this time? After everything he put me through? It felt like a joke. But then I started thinking. Maybe he didn't understand how much he had hurt me. Maybe he thought time had healed everything, that I'd just moved on. So, I decided to show him. I went through the journals I'd kept since I was a kid, flipping through years of pain and frustration and loneliness. I scanned pages where I had written about feeling abandoned, about crying myself to sleep, about wishing someone would notice how much I was struggling. I even included quotes from him, things he had said during arguments that still echoed in my head, like, "Stop being so dramatic," or "You'll be fine." The last slide was a picture of one of my mom's collages. It was one of my favorites, a simple drawing of a sun with the words, "Your dad and I will always be here for you," written underneath. And then, in bold letters, I added, "You failed. Go away." I sent it to him through email. No message, no explanation, just the PowerPoint. I knew it was harsh, but I didn't know any other way to make him understand. Talking to him felt pointless. He'd just interrupt, defend himself, or try to twist my feelings into something that fit his narrative. The PowerPoint was my way of saying, "This is what you did to me. This is why I can't have you in my life." Now the fallout has started. My phone has been blowing up with messages from relatives, some telling me I went too far, others saying they understand. My dad apparently is a wreck. My grandparents told me he's fallen apart after reading it. Part of me feels bad, guilty even. But another part of me feels relieved, like I finally got to say what I've been holding in for so long. I don't know if I did the right thing. Maybe it was cruel. Maybe I should have just ignored him. But at the same time, I needed him to know. I needed him to see the damage he caused. What do you think? Was I too harsh, or was this the only way to make him understand? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Olivia's story resonated deeply with the community, sparking a wide range of responses. While many supported her decision to stand firm and prioritize her well-being, others had mixed feelings about her method of delivering the message. Here are some of the most prominent comments. You're not wrong to set boundaries and stand up for yourself. Your dad's pain is a consequence of his own actions. He abandoned you emotionally for years and prioritized someone else over you, which no parent should ever do. You're allowed to protect yourself, even if it makes him uncomfortable. Frankly, the PowerPoint was an honest and clear way to communicate something that he clearly didn't understand before. Don't let anyone guilt you into thinking you're wrong for this. Cherry Blossom 08. This comment was one of the top voted responses. Many readers echoed the sentiment, pointing out that Olivia's father had neglected his responsibilities as a parent and that she had every right to express her feelings in a way that worked for her. The community largely agreed that her father's pain was a reflection of his own failures, and that Olivia wasn't obligated to prioritize his emotions after everything she'd endured. Neutral comment. I think your response is reasonable, but it does come across as a little cruel. Don't get me wrong, your dad failed you in so many ways, and he needs to understand the depth of the pain he caused. However, I wonder if there's room for reconciliation here. Losing your brother and realizing his mistakes may have changed him. Would you consider giving him a chance to prove he's truly sorry and willing to be better? Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but it might help you find closure. Open Mind J. This perspective sparked a thoughtful discussion among readers. Some agreed that forgiveness could potentially bring closure for both Olivia and her father, while others argued that reconciliation isn't always necessary, especially when trust has been irreparably damaged. Olivia's situation struck a chord with readers who faced similar dilemmas, and this comment highlighted the complexity of navigating family relationships. Mild criticism. I completely understand why you feel the way you do, and your dad absolutely deserved to hear the truth. That said, sending a PowerPoint with hurtful words might not have been the best approach. While it communicated your feelings clearly, it also seemed designed to hurt him deeply. Maybe a direct conversation would have been a better way to get your point across without further damaging the relationship. At the very least, it would have given him a chance to respond. Real Talk 42. This comment represented a smaller but notable portion of the community who felt Olivia's actions, while justified, might have crossed the line into unnecessary cruelty. They suggested that while her father needed to confront the reality of his mistakes, there might have been a less confrontational way to achieve that goal. Others countered that Olivia's PowerPoint was necessary to ensure her voice was heard without interruption or manipulation. Across the comments, one theme stood out: the deep empathy for Olivia's pain. Her story sparked an emotional debate about boundaries, forgiveness, and the challenges of navigating complex family dynamics. Many commenters admired her courage in confronting her father, even if they differed on how she chose to do so. Ultimately, the community agreed that Olivia had every right to decide what was best for her own mental health and well-being. As one commenter put it, at the end of the day, this is your story, your life, and your decision. Only you know what's right for you. What do you think? Do you agree with the community's perspectives? Would you handle things differently in Olivia's situation? Let us know in the comments below. When I sent the PowerPoint to my father, I knew it would stir emotions. I expected him to feel the weight of my words, to see the pain he caused me laid out in undeniable clarity. But what I didn't anticipate was the avalanche of feedback from my extended family. The moment he read it, my phone lit up with messages, some sympathetic, others downright furious. It was as though my family was divided into two camps: those who believed I was justified in my actions, and those who thought I'd crossed an unforgivable line. My grandparents were among the first to reach out. They called me, their voices heavy with a mix of sorrow and understanding. "We didn't realize how bad it was," my grandmother said, her words faltering as she tried to process the full scope of my childhood. They admitted that they should have been more involved, should have seen through the surface and stepped in when I was younger. But they also expressed concern for my father, explaining how devastated he was after reading the PowerPoint. "It broke him," my grandfather added quietly. "He's not in a good place right now." Hearing this gave me mixed feelings. A part of me felt vindicated. For once, he was forced to confront the reality of his neglect, stripped of the excuses he had likely told himself over the years. But another part of me felt a pang of guilt. Did I go too far? Was I unnecessarily cruel in the way I chose to communicate my pain? And yet, when I thought about forgiveness, I couldn't bring myself to consider it. I've spent countless nights replaying the same memories in my head. The birthdays he forgot, the times I sat in the stands alone at school events, the moments when I desperately needed a kind word or a hug, only to be met with indifference. I don't have a single good memory of my father. Every interaction with him is tainted by disappointment, abandonment, and the crushing realization that I was never his priority. That's why I can't forgive him. It's not about holding a grudge or being petty, it's about self-preservation. Letting him back into my life would mean reopening wounds that I've fought so hard to heal. I can't risk that. But that doesn't mean I don't question myself. This whole situation has left me feeling torn. Am I being too rigid? Should I have approached this differently? Could there ever be a chance for reconciliation, or is it too late? When I sent the PowerPoint, I thought it would be the end of this chapter. I wanted to give him closure, while also making it clear that I didn't want him in my life. But instead, it seems to have opened a new floodgate of emotions. Not just for him, but for me too. Some of the feedback from my family has been particularly harsh. An aunt texted me saying, "You're punishing him for trying to make amends. Do you really think this is what your mom would have wanted?" That comment hit me harder than I'd like to admit. Would my mom have approved of what I did? I don't know. All I know is that she wouldn't have wanted me to suffer, and that's exactly what happened when my father abandoned me emotionally. My cousins have been more supportive. One of them messaged me saying, "I can't believe the strength it took for you to send that. It was harsh, yeah, but he needed to hear it. He can't fix what he doesn't acknowledge." Their words reassured me, but they didn't erase the doubts lingering in my mind. Even now, I wonder if reconciliation is something I should consider, not for his sake, but for mine. People talk about forgiveness as though it's a magical cure for emotional wounds, but I'm not convinced. Forgiveness feels like giving him permission to gloss over the years of pain he caused me. It feels like letting him off the hook, and I'm not sure I can do that. And yet, there's a small voice in the back of my mind whispering, "What if this is your last chance?" Life is unpredictable, and the thought of losing him without ever having a real conversation sits uneasily with me. But I don't even know where to start. How do you rebuild a relationship that was never strong to begin with? How do you open the door to someone who hurt you so deeply? So now, I turn to you. I've shared my story and my feelings, and I need your help to figure out what's next. Do you think I'm being too rigid? Am I closing myself off to something that could bring closure or healing? Or am I right to stand firm and protect my peace? I don't want to regret my choices, but I also don't want to leave questions unanswered. I've been carrying this pain for so long, and I don't want it to define the rest of my life. If you've been in a similar situation, or if you have any advice, I'd love to hear it. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Is reconciliation worth the risk, or should I continue to keep my distance? For now, I'm at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. All I know is that I want to make the decision that's best for me, not for him, not for my family, but for me. As Olivia shared more of her story and her internal conflict, the community responded with a renewed wave of support and insight. Her honest and raw appeal resonated with readers, prompting a mix of empathy, encouragement, and thoughtful suggestions. While opinions varied, one thing was clear. Everyone respected Olivia's bravery in confronting such a painful chapter of her life. Narrator's opinion. Reading through Olivia's story, it's impossible not to feel the weight of her pain. She endured years of emotional neglect and abandonment from the very person who was supposed to protect her. Her decision to send the PowerPoint wasn't just about expressing her anger, it was about giving her father a glimpse into her reality. While some may see it as harsh, it was a powerful way to communicate her boundaries and assert control over her own healing. Forgiveness, as some have pointed out, isn't always about reconciliation. Sometimes, it's about finding peace within yourself. User Opinion 1. Olivia, you've endured so much, and I admire your strength. Setting boundaries is necessary when someone has hurt you as deeply as your father did. You don't have to forgive if it doesn't bring you peace. People love to talk about the power of forgiveness, but they often forget that forgiveness is a personal journey, not an obligation. You're allowed to put your well-being first, and you've already shown incredible courage in doing so. Healing Heart 44. This comment captured what many in the community felt. It validated Olivia's choice to prioritize her emotional health over societal expectations of forgiveness, offering her the reassurance that she wasn't alone in her decision. User Opinion 2. I know it's complicated, but maybe he really is sorry. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing his behavior, It's about freeing yourself from the pain that's been weighing you down. I'm not saying you need to let him back into your life, but maybe a small step toward healing could help both of you. Even if it's just for your own closure, it might be worth considering. Growth and grace. This perspective, while different, highlighted a path forward that some readers believed could help Olivia. It focused on the idea that forgiveness doesn't have to mean reconciling, but can instead serve as a way to release the lingering hurt and anger. The responses reflect the complexity of Olivia's situation. There is no clear right or wrong. As she navigates this challenging time, the community's insights remind her that the choice is ultimately hers to make. What would you do in her shoes? Let us know your thoughts below. After spending weeks wrestling with the flood of emotions and opinions, I finally sat down with my grandparents for a heart-to-heart conversation. They were the only ones who seemed willing to approach me with both understanding and honesty, and for that, I'll always be grateful. My grandmother spoke first. She admitted, with tears in her eyes, that they had failed me in some ways. "We should have done more for you," she said quietly, her voice trembling with guilt. "We thought you were just being quiet, adjusting to everything, but we didn't realize how much you were suffering." My grandfather nodded, adding that they had trusted my father to handle things, never imagining the extent of his neglect. For the first time, I felt truly seen by someone in my family. They acknowledged that I had been overlooked, that I'd spent my childhood feeling invisible while everyone's focus was elsewhere. It didn't fix the past, but hearing those words brought me a measure of closure I hadn't realized I needed. We also talked about the PowerPoint and the fallout it had caused. They both agreed that, while it might have been harsh, it was an honest reflection of my reality. They promised to respect my decision to keep my father out of my life. "We won't bring him up again unless you want to talk about him," my grandmother assured me. It was a small but meaningful promise, one that gave me a sense of control over this part of my life. That conversation helped solidify my stance. I realized I don't want to reconcile with my father. Not now, not ever. The truth is, I've built a life without him. I've surrounded myself with people who love me, who see me for who I am, and don't expect me to bury my pain to make them comfortable. My maternal family has always been my rock. They've supported me through everything, and their love has shown me what family is supposed to feel like. I don't see any benefit in having my father back in my life. What could he offer me now that I've already learned to live without him? Bringing him back would only reopen old wounds and create new ones. I'm not interested in trying to repair something that was never whole to begin with. For those who believe I'm being too rigid or that forgiveness is necessary for healing, I want to say this: forgiveness isn't a universal solution. Sometimes, the best way to heal is to let go completely, not just of the anger, but of the person who caused it. I've let go of my father in every way that matters. In the weeks since that conversation, I've shifted my focus to myself and the family who has always been there for me. My maternal grandparents, who raised me with love and care after my mother passed, have been my constant source of comfort. They are my family, my home. Instead of dwelling on what I've lost, I'm focusing on what I have. I've started journaling again, not about pain or loss, but about gratitude. Writing has always been a way for me to process my emotions, and now it's become a tool for celebrating the small joys in my life. The laughter I share with friends, the quiet mornings spent with a cup of coffee, the peace I feel knowing I'm finally in control of my own story. I've also taken steps to protect my mental health. Therapy has been a lifeline for me, helping me work through the residual hurt without letting it define me. It's not about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about learning to live with it without letting it dictate my future. As for my father, I genuinely hope he finds peace. I don't wish him harm, but I also don't wish to be part of his life. He needs to confront his own guilt and shortcomings without dragging me back into the chaos. This chapter of my life feels like it's finally coming to a close. It hasn't been easy, but I've reached a place where I feel strong and secure in my decisions. My boundaries are firm, and my heart is lighter, knowing I don't have to carry the weight of a relationship that only brought me pain. For anyone reading this who might be in a similar situation, I want to leave you with this. It's okay to put yourself first. It's okay to walk away from people who hurt you, even if they're family. Your well-being matters more than fulfilling someone else's expectations of forgiveness or reconciliation. This journey hasn't been perfect, but it's mine, and I'm proud of how far I've come. Thank you to everyone who shared their thoughts, advice, and support. It means more than you know. What do you think about Olivia's decision? Would you have made the same choice, or would you approach it differently? Let us know in the comments below. Olivia's story has been a powerful reminder of the complexities of family relationships and the emotional strength it takes to protect one's peace. Through her journey, we've seen the pain of being neglected, the courage it takes to confront those wounds, and the resilience required to move forward. While some may view her decision as harsh, Olivia's choice to prioritize her well-being highlights an important truth. Forgiveness is not mandatory, and it's okay to walk away from relationships that hurt more than they heal. This story reminds us that setting boundaries is essential, even when it involves people we love. Family doesn't always mean unconditional acceptance, especially when the actions of others have caused deep and lasting harm. By drawing a line, Olivia reclaimed her power and refused to allow her past to define her future. Her decision was not about cruelty, but about survival and self-preservation, a lesson that many can learn from. One of the most profound takeaways from Olivia's journey is the idea that healing looks different for everyone. For some, forgiveness and reconciliation may bring closure. For others, letting go entirely and choosing to live without the presence of those who caused pain is the best path forward. There's no universal solution, and that's okay. What matters most is doing what feels right for your own mental health and happiness. As we close Olivia's story, it's important to reflect on the power of self-awareness and the bravery it takes to prioritize oneself. Her journey was not easy, but it was necessary for her to find peace. It's a testament to the fact that sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that lead to the greatest freedom. What do you think of Olivia's story? Do you agree with her decision to cut ties with her father, or would you have approached things differently? Have you ever been in a similar situation where you had to choose between forgiveness and walking away? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. If you found Olivia's journey inspiring or thought-provoking, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And if you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to AGS Stories so you never miss out on meaningful real-life content that explores the complexities of relationships and personal growth. Thank you for watching, and remember, your mental health and happiness always come first. See you in the next story.